Good evening. Full attendance tonight. I love it. Thank you all very much for coming. We're going to start off with citizen participation. So anyone that is here wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda, please approach the podium and you have 5 minutes to speak. For people, things not on the agenda. Come on up. Ma'am, as you approach, before you get started, could you please state your name and address? And if you want to pull the microphone down, you're welcome to.
Okay. My name is Melanie Clark, and my address is 2752 North Atlantic Street in Brookline. As a resident of the former village of Brookline, I have been interested in the building projects along MM and how they are going to affect the future of the village. I looked at the page on the city website for construction projects, and although nothing is listed for the project on MM, I did find that a small warehouse was going to be built in the village around the corner from me. None of the neighbors I talked to were aware of this, so I began searching on the city website for any kind of zoning maps. I read every agenda from the city council that dealt with Brookline, and I also looked at the major projects list on the website. The only information I could find concerning us was from last year when our neighbors had their house and property rezoned from commercial to residential. In those documents, I found a future land use map, and it seemed to indicate that all the houses on Hale Street, which are the ones that go from the post office of Brookline all the way back through our village, were going to be rezoned as commercial, and that the houses on the other side of the railroad tracks were going to become a business park. This concerns us and our neighbors that we've talked to. No one has had any knowledge of this rezoning, and nobody had seen those maps. Our main concerns are that this will increase traffic through the village. Our roads are very narrow. And also, all of us, our houses and the buildings in the village are very old. My home in particular is 120 years old. We've put a lot of time and money and effort into maintaining and restoring these old homes. The neighbors all take great pride in their homes, and it's going to mean the loss of a unique historical and community aspects of our neighborhood. We live in a quiet neighborhood. You'll often see the neighbors like walking, riding their bikes. The kids play all over the place. We can do that because our neighborhood is quiet and we don't have to worry about traffic and cars and things like that. We've made the effort to know most of our neighbors by name. And if we don't know the neighbor's name, we at least know their dog's name. The neighbors help each other. This summer, we noticed an elderly neighbor who needed his yard work done. He's a 90-year-old vet of the Air Force, and he was not able to do his yard work, so we got neighbors together, and we got his yard mowed and the dead trees trimmed, and we just came together as a neighborhood and showed him that there's community and that people care. People bring produce to each other from their gardens. We bring soup to each other when we're sick. We take neighbors to doctor's appointments. We really watch out for each other. We're truly a community. Losing this to commercial buildings would be an enormous loss. Many of the homes are still standing from the time that Brookline was a booming town. We have taken interest in our neighbors' efforts to restore and maintain their homes. People often come to visit us because I always share the fascinating history I've learned, both from the archive department at the Greene County Courthouse and just from the neighbors who are longtime residents that have taken pride in the community. We are happy, very happy, that Republic is open to growth and progress. We just ask that these don't come at the expense of those of us who call the village home and the irreplaceable community and historical value that is provided by Brookline. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you coming and speaking to this. Mr. Campbell.
Ma'am, can I ask you one question just to clarify? Is the concern with what the future land use map represented would happen with where the residences were?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. So that's something that we can show you. We are currently working on the comprehensive plan for the city that talks about the future land use map. It has not been, quite frankly, that map and all the updates really didn't occur until, I think it was 1985. So there's been a lot of transition, obviously, with the consolidation of Brookline in 2007. So I would encourage you to participate in that process as we go out to the public. That will be open for community engagement. We would love to have your support and your involvement and engagement in that process, because we need to hear that information and that feedback, and we're looking to grow and to develop that area. But yes, it's important for you to be a part of it, and we desperately and we very much want the community's engagement in the overall growth and development and structure. And Brookline is a major player in that development. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak to something that's not on the agenda tonight? All right, seeing nothing, I'm going to close citizen participation. We're going to move forward to the consent agenda. I need a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. On the boards, commissions, and committees schedule, there are several things coming up. Something very, very important. City Council special session meeting and budget workshop coming up October 27, 2020. Someone's going to have to tell my wife I'm missing the parent-teacher conference that's scheduled that night. I'm not joking. Somebody's really going to have to tell her. City Council meeting November 3rd, 2020. Board of Adjustments meeting November 5th, 2020. Planning and Zoning meeting November 9th, 2020. And then City Council meeting again November 17th, 2020. Moving on to old business and tabled items number 3 on our agenda. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 20-45 by title only. Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri authorizing the city administrator to enter into a first amended intergovernmental agreement with the City of Springfield for a consolidated police records management system.
Chief Sells gave an overview last time, but he's here to answer any questions council may have. Anybody have any questions about this ordinance? Seeing no questions, I need a motion and a second for final passage of Bill 20-45.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We are now going to take a roll call vote. This roll call vote will be done on our computers. Voting is now open. Please click refresh and place your vote. After you place your vote, hit submit. All right, everybody's voted. I wore my glasses tonight so I can see the screen. And there it goes. Motion carries 7-0. All right. Moving on to item number 4 on our agenda. We need to untable something that was tabled from last time. Resolution 20-R-42 was tabled at the October 6th, 2020 meeting until tonight. So more information could be provided to council about this item. It's my understanding that we have gotten more information that will be provided tonight, but first we need to have a motion to untable it. So I need a motion and a second to untable Resolution 20-R-42.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor to untabling the item?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0 to untable it. Now, as it's a resolution, I will read the title. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, approving and authorizing the city administrator to submit a renewal application for hall provider of bingo premises. I need a motion and a second to take up Resolution 20-R-42.
Motion.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Now we open it up. Do we have more information about this application process from the city? No one wants to jump in?
Well, I mean, I'll provide it. So basically, our staff looked into how these funds and looked into some of the questions or concerns that were there. Unfortunately, my email's not pulling up to show it to me. So it says here, the Bingo through Public Senior Center is regulated by Missouri Gaming Commission under the supervision of the Gaming Commission. Sheila Dieter is the chairperson, and Judy Wolf is the co-chairperson of operations at the Republic Senior Center. Sheila oversees the game for state regulation and is responsible for collecting the funds during game day. Typically, funds are rolled into the payout of that day. Only a small percentage is kept and deposited to the Missouri Bank. The money is used to buy authorized bingo supplies from the Missouri Gaming Commission and everyday supplies, i.e. coffee. This was the direction that was given by staff. So basically, it was just outlining how those funds were to be allocated and how they were being utilized at the senior center. And so that is the response that Ms. Mayfield, Jennifer Mayfield, was able to glean since the last meeting and provided to my office. And if there's anything else that I could show, I don't see anything that additional further information.
Mr. Cameron, may I ask a question?
Sure.
So my understanding of this resolution is that this is about an application for a bingo
Permit, yes.
and this is required by Missouri state law?
Yes.
Okay, so this is something that we have to do if bingo were to remain there?
It's a permit only. I mean, it's not a matter of how they use the funds, but it's good to know what that is, but that's still something for their board to be responsible for the oversight of how that is applied. But it has no bearing on our approval of the permit. Our permit is based upon, is that something we wish to continue?
Okay. Any questions or discussion from council on this issue about the application for a bingo permit? Mr. Dyken.
Does it still have to, are they still required to have their own permit to do the bingo? Ours is just strictly for the facility, is that correct?
Our permit is that allows them, we're permitting them to use the facility, and we're permitting it, I believe we're the oversight.
That's correct, Councilmember Dykeman. This is only for the city since we are the owner of the building itself. Senior Age, who runs and manages the senior center under a lease with the city, is still the ones responsible for dealing directly with the Missouri Gaming Commission and abiding by their rules and regulations that deal with the actual bingo that occurs at the facility. This is just because we own the building.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about this resolution by City Council?
Resolution.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question. Has it been resolved? I know there was concern about where the money goes to. Is that still an issue that we are having, or do we feel good about it?
That's not our issue.
Yeah,
I understand the permit is
Right.
for that, okay, but they can deal with as far as their own committee outside of that.
my understanding there's a board of governors that would
Okay.
dictate all of
That's
that,
what
so.
I wanted to- Okay.
So this permit is basically just to cover our end of, it says we own the building, it's just covering our obligations, but they will be the ones actually running it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
that is correct. I mean, our issue, what's before this council is a permit, whether yes or no to allow our permit to continue. In question, I'm not privy to what that necessarily the table completely was, or what that is, but see, the city also, where you would get into questions about the use or resolving the use of the facility, or if it's in compliance, would appear in the renewal of the lease that the city has, and say if there was a concern with the operation, the maintenance, which we're responsible for the maintenance, but if there was something, a question with the operation of the senior center, that would be controlled through the lease, or the renewal of the lease, or that is not the issue with this particular permit. The approval of that has no bearing on the operation of the facility.
any other questions or discussion from council on this resolution? All right, seeing none other, I will call it for a vote. All those in favor of approving this?
Aye.
I
Opposed?
abstain.
Yes, ma'am, I'll get to that.
Sorry.
You're okay. I think we know how Ms. Pools feels. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
So
Sorry.
Motion carries 6-0 to 1. Excellent. Moving on to new business. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 20-46 by title only.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries 7-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing a municipal agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for railroad improvements along Route 16.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brickner is here to give an overview of the project.
Good evening. So MoDOT has received a Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Grant, or a CRISI grant. That is a federally funded grant that they will use to make improvements along the railroad, along MoDOT corridors, in this case US 60. They're part of, this grant is part of the improvements they're making at 174, where the sidewalk will go under the railroad bridge there on 174. And they will also be making improvements near O'Neill Road. And some of the improvements on O'Neill Road will actually be on our right-of-way. So what this agreement does is allows MoDOT to operate on our right-of-way. And this is no cost to the city. This is completely funded through MoDOT in this grant. So
I think you warned us this was coming whenever we presented it originally back a long time ago. Is that correct?
I don't think that's this one,
No.
but there's more coming too, so.
Any questions or comments from council? All right, seeing none, remember this is a first read, so if you have any questions, please get with Mr. Brickner before the next meeting. Moving on to item number 6, I need a motion and a second for the first reading of Bill 20-47 by title only.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the city administrator to enter into a development agreement with Siegfried Industrial Properties for public improvements.
Mr. Cameron, are you taking this one?
I sure am.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Has been widely communicated in some form, the city is working on a large-scale development on MM and Sawyer Road and Farm Road 160. In that development is approximately 113 acres of development that is currently underway, again, through non-disclosure agreements that we have. That project is underway, but until final documents and things are acquired, we still cannot release, and I'm not at liberty to release the name. The project is moving forward. In that project, includes roughly $4 million of improvements to MM Highway. In this development agreement, this is an additional $500,000 in the exhibit that would be to extend or add a turn lane that would yield to Farm Road 160. So if you're thinking from the fuel farm, moving towards Farm Road 160, so if you're thinking about that site, I wish I had the aerial. And it should be in your packet, the exhibit. Do we have that exhibit that we could show others? Anyone have it? There we go. So there's Farm Road 160. That is the facing northbound MM. So what that does is it adds a turn lane specifically designated for Farm Road 160. The backside of what we refer to as Project Lunker is, and no, we did not name it, but in framing into the back of the property, there will be a point of ingress and egress about where the FR for Farm Road, about in that same area. You can kind of see where they're cutting that in. What they're having to do and what MoDOT has requested is that they escrow the funds into an account under the city's control, and we've agreed for a period of not to exceed 5 years. So basically, if they're going to escrow over $500,000, and I want to talk about the estimate a little bit more, but if they're going to escrow $500,000, then we're asking the state and or the city to be able to move and not just hold up $500,000 of someone's money and not make improvements to a state highway. They do agree, the developer, that this is an improvement that will benefit their development. This is not something they're saying, hey, this is a bad deal. I really wish there would be some partnerships in this financially. We'll continue to work on that. But I will share with you that in this development, it is a 3-lane improvement from not only from there, but as you begin to move further to the north, to the north, that there will be traffic signals at Hale Street. There'll be a traffic signal at Sawyer Road, and there'll be one at westbound 360 off the James River. And so, but what's not been outlined in previous, because that's part of the overall development and the approval of our approval as a city, that has already been established. What's not been established is that they need to escrow these funds. So we worked very quickly. So this was a last minute agenda item because this was a last minute approach or request that came out through the additional reviews of the traffic study that was provided by Project Lunker. From that, the cost estimates are still not dialed in. And so we put together this agreement. Scott worked very quickly. Parties were agreeable to this, but there's still a few tweaks and minor edits that need to be taken place, but that cost estimate needs to be modified with a little bit more detail about the cost of right-of-way, cost of design, prevailing wage questions, things of that. So there's just a few things. We wanted to get it to the first read, but there are a few details that you're going to see that are going to be modified that I talk about in the cost estimate. But the detail of the outline of what improvements will be made there will not be changing. I don't see very much changes in that exhibit or what we're going to be doing with those funds. The key is to get it done within 5 years or the money goes away. So therein lies the challenge of us working with MoDOT and other parties, not to just lose $500,000 worth of improvements to NM Highway. I'll be more happy to entertain any questions or answer anything that I can. But again, I want to be very clear, this is a first read. You will see amendments just because we've been agreeable to working with MoDOT and the buyer to make sure that it's a win-win-win and we achieve the objective. So it's still open for negotiation if necessary. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Cameron? All right. Please remember, this is the first read, so if you have any questions, please get in touch with staff before the next meeting. Moving on to other business. Item number 7, 20-R-30, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the purchase of radios for the police department. I need a motion and a second to take up resolution 20-R-30.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lieutenant Burks is here. Please give us an overview.
The Republic Police Department is requesting to purchase 29 Motorola radios, handheld radios, through En-Route Enterprises LLC. We went through a sealed bid process. En-Route was the lowest, most responsible bidder out of that process. The reason we are needing these radios, number one, our radios are currently very antiquated, but they run on an 800 megahertz system currently. And the first quarter of next year, they are already in the process of upgrading. It will go live in the first quarter of next year up to a P25 system. I know those numbers don't mean a whole lot, but it means that the radios we currently have will not work. So around March or April of next year, when that goes into effect, we won't have working radios. Most of our car radios are able to be upgraded, and we have very few handheld radios that could make that switch, and even those are 12, 13 years old, so they're not going to last much longer either.
Okay. Any questions or discussion?
Are there going to be any value if we sell it?
There are some companies that do buy the old radios, and I think they basically just take them and use the parts to keep other radios running. So yes, there is a small, I don't think it's a whole lot per radio, but.
Mr. Mayor, I want to commend you and the staff, the finance department. This is a process that many of you would not see when you're reading these documents that I'm aware of and familiar with. And the question with being a responsible bidder, doing the right thing, following our vision. There was a challenge with the previous bid that created concern or questions about the validity of it or the integrity of it, or was it handled right or handled incorrectly. So instead of staff just bringing something forward when there's that much challenge or concern associated with the bid, and as difficult as it was and the delay that it took, doing the right thing and protecting the integrity of the community's dollar, sometimes it gets overlooked. I am very aware this council would not see that in this document tonight, but I want to make note of it. But I appreciate, I know it was an extra hurdle that you have to go through. It's a necessary one to protect the integrity of the process of what we're doing. I know that's difficult for staff because as someone that was a department head in the past, you got to follow the internal controls and work through it. We want to provide you those tools and resources quickly. but it's got to be above reproach for the community if they were looking at it. And I appreciate the work and the additional effort by everyone that said, hey, let's stop, look at this. Scott, I know you're involved. Just making sure we did the right thing. So I'm sorry for the delay. I'm glad to get this done the right way, that we can look at it and say, you know what, if someone was to question the integrity of the process or the integrity of the decision, rest assured, council, community, mayor, this was done with the utmost integrity, even to the point that they had to stop and redo the whole thing. So I commend you, I commend the staff for waiting and getting this done the right way. Thank you.
Hearing all of that, any other questions or comments by council? Seeing none, as this is a resolution, I will call it for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution carries 7-0. Moving on to item number 8, 20-R-46, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, determining the intent to reimburse itself for certain capital expenditures in connections with improvements to its combined waterworks and sewage system. Give us an overview.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, the resolution that we're bringing forward to you is recently Council approved 2 task orders that we have with Burns and McDonnell engineering firm. It was task order number 9 and task order number 10. We have work that has just recently begun on those 2 engineering tasks, and as a result of that, we are bringing this resolution forward. Basically, the way bonding works is if you have eligible expenses when you issue bonds, you can reimburse yourself as long as it's been within 3 years and you passed a resolution stating your intent to do so within 60 days of incurring the first expense. This is an IRS regulation. As a city, we issue tax-exempt bonds. Otherwise, we wouldn't want to jump through all these hoops. But the IRS, we will happily put this resolution forward to you guys today to consider so that if we were to proceed, we're not saying that this would tie us to having to do a bond issuance, but in the event that we do a bond issuance for our wastewater capital improvement program, the capital projects that we are looking at building with the task order number 10 that Burns and Mac is currently engineering, then we would have the option to reimburse ourselves. So basically, the amount of the task orders 9 and 10 came to approximately $2.4 million, and then we've built in some contingency expenses, so approximately $2.5 million that we're looking at we'd be able to reimburse ourselves if we were to go out and successfully get a bond issuance.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions, comments, or discussion from council? All right, seeing none. As this is a resolution, I will move it for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the finance report. Do we have PowerPoint?
Down arrows, okay. Well, this is the September financials. I sent out the August financials via email, but today we're going to cover the September. So this is what you guys have been waiting for, the sales tax numbers. We are at 12.46 increase over sales revenue over 2019 year to date. What that looks like on the general fund is we are up $278,574 over last year's collections in the general fund. I know the next question I would have at the end of this is, what do we think is contributing to this? I still can't answer that 100%, and it's still unknown if it will continue, but I can tell you that looking at our sales reports that we do have, the only thing I could really disclose is we did have a couple new businesses come online that's factored in that, and we also had a higher than normal amount of car sales revenue. And so I think some of that is catching up from earlier when the Department of Revenue was closed down or had limited hours. So I think that was a big factor in that for this month's deposits. The cash accounts for our general fund, that's our cash report, basically what is in our checking accounts. The general fund, we still have unrestricted cash of $3.3 million. Our financial sustainability account, which I've talked about quite a bit since we started the COVID pandemic, we still have not touched that. The $1,034,146 has not been used. It's still sitting there in a savings account, and it will continue to sit there because luckily we have had that sales tax increase. Our water unrestricted cash, I know back in, not August, but in July when I did the presentation, we had discussed that the water fund was a little bit low, and so I discussed how we were going to look into that, do some adjustments. We did, and so it's $287,423. So it's starting to build itself back up, and some of it was transfers that we did from the wastewater. The cyst, you know, we have been working really hard. We completed the animal control facility, and our balance on there of cash is $335,000. We do have the police radios that you just approved, which will be coming out for an additional $82,000 approximately. So where we should be, target, if you're looking at our financials and saying, well, what is our target point for this? You know, how do we know if we're on schedule? Well, we should be at 75% for the month of September. And so in our general fund, our revenue is 79%. That is partially because of that sales tax revenue we discussed. And we are at 64% of expenses, and that was strategic due to the financial sustainability. 84% is in the street fund right now, and 55% expense. They have not worked as many projects as they had originally budgeted due to different development agreements and other factors. So they have a $406,000 fund balance, 74% revenue in the water fund, and 73% in expense. So they are right on target. The revenue is following their expenses. They only have $20,235 margin though. And so that is important to remember as we go into our 2021 budget discussions, because I will reference that. Our wastewater fund, we have 78% revenue and 47% expense. As you're aware, we started working on the Burns and Mack engineering that was originally planned on also doing a public works building. We will start the public works building in next year's fiscal budget, and so that's why we are under budget. Wastewater fund, public works building engineering, like I just mentioned, will be moved to 2021. We did just make the final payoff of the SRF 2001C loan. It happened on October 1st. We initiated in September, and it was for the amount of $646,142. And we have started the engineering for the wastewater plant, but most of that expense will be in the 2021 budget. And that's the task order number 10, which we just did the reimbursement resolution for. Parks fund, we're at 72% of revenue. A lot of that is the higher sales tax revenue, and the Greene County parks tax remained high as well, pretty similar to ours. Their expense is at 90%, but they only have a margin of $21,000. As you're aware, some of their program revenues were lower. So back to our financial sustainability, we still monitor it even though our sales tax is a little bit higher because we are not through the crisis, and so we will continue to monitor it and be cautious. In our general fund, our budgeted revenues difference from the actual is $226,283. We did lose our interest revenue, as we have mentioned before. And then our budget expenditures, we are under budget by $619,000. So as you can see, that's a net difference of $845,559. We have resumed, though, the council chamber remodel, so that net difference will go down. We've also started buying some of our other capital items going into the end of the year. So one last thing, the general fund state motor fuel and interest are the only revenues that are remaining under budget. So if you look at your financial reports, you'll still see that those are in red. I do not anticipate that the motor fuel cell, the motor fuel revenue will make up itself because of the low gas prices in the beginning of the year. And the municipal court remains low. That's because they had restricted hours and they had less people coming in. And then, of course, the parks and street fund sales tax revenues are at budget, but the program revenues, as I mentioned before, are still low on the park side. So in summary, we resumed filling our vacant positions that were on hold. We have filled the finance officer, the paralegal, and one of the firefighter positions. We still have vacancies, but some of those are posted. 5 police officers, 1 PSR in the police department, a part-time court clerk, and 2 firefighters. The billed administrative assistant and HR generalist position will be vacant until 2021. And work has resumed on the new council chambers, the gateway signs, and the IT networks. And then last but not least, we purchased the city vehicle that we had budgeted. It was paid for in part by the grant from Greene County of $14,285. Like I mentioned, we're still monitoring this very carefully. Thank you. And last but not least, I did want to mention the CARES grant. Greene County did award us the CARES grant. We have made contact to all the customers who will be eligible to receive it by either phone or email. And we're just waiting for the check. So as soon as the check arrives, those funds will be applied to everyone's account, and then the city will send out a receipt so that every customer knows that it was actually applied. And we really thank Greene County for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Moving on to reports from staff. Mr. Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to thank Jared and Lisa, and the mayor and the council. It was nice to take a break for a while, step aside, just to recharge and refresh. It's always necessary. And so the season we're in and the opportunities that we're facing, it was to find a window. And so I was able to do that, to get away and recharge. But I want to thank the staff, Lisa and Jared and everyone that kept the administration pieces moving forward in our absence, because the city's not slowing down, and things are continuing to move at a pretty rapid pace. So again, I appreciate the community feedback tonight about the development in Brookline, the village of Brookline. So it's important that we hear from our community when we're growing and developing. We take that very seriously because we don't want to just grow for the sake of growing. We also want to capitalize on the opportunities that's presented to our community to help grow and make Republic the best community that it can be, to reach its full potential and opportunity. I'm just thankful for our staff that even when you're gone, nothing stops. I mean, long after I'm gone, long after we're gone, this community will continue to thrive and move forward. And I appreciate the fact that we can appreciate that, take time away from it. So, and again, I thank you, Debbie, for the CARES Act, for Greene County and your assistance. I think it just embodies who we are as an organization, that we care about the little things, and that people were struggling through COVID-19 still are with their utility bills. People have still lost their jobs. And so finding a way for us to distribute those funds, to be accountable for those funds, to be responsible for that. I appreciate the staff's work, everything from our HR staff and everything you have to do when you're navigating through those things, and from the legal perspective. It's just not been, it's been an interesting season. In one aspect, you're dealing with COVID. On the other side, you're dealing with the large capital advancement of your community, and you're working on growth and development. Some of the communications that I saw and we've been working on was, we have over 1,000 residential units in some level of development. We're working on multiple projects. I'd be happy to report and tell you that we're working on, retail and restaurants, and more things are looking to come to our community. But we also have to take time to stop and realize there are people that are still struggling with COVID, and I appreciate the work of the CARES Act and the work that the staff has done to administrate that. We don't want to lose sight of it. It's not just all growth and development. There's still issues that we need to address. Next Tuesday night, next Tuesday night we actually have the budget hearing. I look forward to that budget hearing. I'm excited about that budget hearing. Those that understand, I've been here, this will be my 5th budget, I believe it is. And we started my first year, there was $2,000 left over. I think there was $3,000 left over the year after. We were navigating, bringing this budget, I would say, off of life support into more of a triage, trying to get it back to a place of stability. You will see in this budget that we're looking to advance approximately $117,000 back into our general fund, which is where I would still tell you, my nature is I want that much larger. I know staff would as well. But I appreciate the work by staff to look at ways to cut our expenses, but also at the same time to grow with our community. I look forward, our economy. But I look forward to sharing that budget, but the challenges we still face, as Debbie said tonight, and I mentioned it to you before I left, that water fund balance, it's like it cannot be at $23,000 when it's an enterprise fund. If you were in private business, because we do sell it at a rate, it is an enterprise fund, it is classified as that, it does need to sustain itself. And so that's something that we're going to have to tackle in 2021. And that's never fun because you're starting to discuss rate increases that have to go into place. So those things will be discussed next week. I'm looking forward to having that discussion and talking about what's going on in the community, talking about what's going on in the budget. And lastly, I would tell you, 2 weeks from tonight is your chance to vote. It's your right. It's a right that people have lost their lives and continue to lay down their lives for that right for us to get out and vote. So I'd encourage you, to exercise your civic duty and your opportunity and the rights that you're given to get out and vote 2 weeks from tonight. We'll have a council meeting that night. Business will continue to go on. People have asked me, are we going to cancel the council meeting? No, business has still got to continue to move forward, and I've never seen us cancel one for that because nothing's going to happen before we're done. But we all want to watch it. But I'll tell you what, I love this community. I love this country. I love what we represent. I love our freedoms. But I sure love the ability to lead and be back in my chair and doing my work, and the staff that we represent and the community that we get to represent. It's just awesome. We have a special thing moving on. We should be thankful and blessed for that opportunity because it's not like this everywhere. And so I want to thank you and the community and the staff, the mayor, the council for the privilege to lead your community. So that's all I have. We got executive session too.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Any reports from council? All right, seeing none. No further action other than the announcement of adjournment by the mayor shall take place after an executive session that is scheduled as the last matter on the agenda unless otherwise stated on the agenda or as allowed per RSMO 610.02. Tonight we will be covering number 1, RSMO 610.021.1, pending and or potential litigation, closed session, closed vote, closed record. And number 2, RSMO 610.021.2, real estate acquisition, closed session, closed vote, closed record. And with that, I will announce adjournment.